Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday Night Live brought to you by CrowCast. Joined, as usual, by the incomparable panel of experts that we have on the CrowCast every Tuesday night.
Have you replaced us?
Just trying to pump you up, mate. Macca, how you going?
Very good, thanks, mate.
Yeah, Donkey, how are you?
Yeah, going well this evening, mate.
And Peter, how are you going, mate?
Yes, fighting fit, mate. Fighting fit. How are you, gentlemen?
Very well.
Very well. Let's crack right into it with some news, shall we?
Well, as we're often bound to do, we have a look at tribunal news on a Tuesday night, and I have been searching everywhere for the McStay appeal. I'm assuming that Howe went first and was given 5 games for his trip, and I think that was a fairly elongated hearing, and I suspect that maybe McStay's on now as we speak, or either that or I've missed something.
Cutler.
Cutler.
Yeah, it was upheld. Was upheld, so he's still got the 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I looked everywhere on social media before we came on just to try and find it, but I could not find it. I guess because they were flooding the airwaves were flooded with Howe and the 5-game suspension. So
yeah, pretty amazing. Someone can trip someone. Yes, he broke a leg, but someone can trip someone and get 5, and someone could just about take someone's head off and actually feel like appealing too.
Oh, and Joel Selwood trip someone or try to trip last week, and there was no sighting of it at all. So, but I think 2 games for Cutler was a fair result. Looking at that in slow motion replay, I think it could have been worse. I don't think he kind of led with the elbow per se. It was reasonably sort of tucked in. So I think that 2 games was about 3 down to 2 with an early play. I think was about fair. I thought that McStay was a little bit lucky on the D-Day hit. I think that probably could have seen a game or possibly 2. But other than that, I think that they were around about right.
Well, I agree with you about McStay being very lucky because when we take Tex Walker, when Walker hit that bloke, I don't believe for one moment he intended to hit him in the head or the chin, but he did. That's the whole point. He did. By his action of running at him and hitting him, and he actually made contact with the head, and he got treated accordingly. And I can't see how that doesn't apply to McStay.
Well, because D-Day dropped, and so D-Day contributed to the head high. That was the issue.
I think that's what saved him.
Well, but he pole drove him as well, though. It's not just a tackle. He just pole drove him forward.
Yeah, look, I think he was lucky not to get sanctioned to some extent. Maybe a fine or the rough conduct or careless or something.
I'd be very confident if he was wearing a Crows uniform, he would have got a game.
Yeah, might not disagree with that either, Macca. I can see how the tribunal came to their decision, but I kind of feel like the fact that D-Day dropped at the knees a little bit was an easy out for the MRP or for Christian.
Interesting. Always good to have PJ Crows joining us, a wealth of information, and has just popped up there that Jake Niles reporting in The Age that he's confirming that there will be a 666 on-field structure as of 2019. What do they call it? Under 18 level, the decongestion rules or something like that. I can't remember what they called it now. Something fancy.
Now that's only at centre bounces, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think it's going to be at centre bounces now. We've got to have 666.
Yeah, we're all dumbfounded by that.
I just think that's crazy.
So that's just I don't understand that, but anyway, that looks to be the direction that they're heading, and obviously the mouthpieces are now being told about it. So
looks like centre bounce. Yeah.
Well, this could be the last season of CrowCast then, because quite honestly, it blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how much of an actual difference it's going to make. Time to time, though. There's most people Most setups wouldn't be too far off that. I think you might have a couple extras loaded on the side of the squares, but it's just centre bounces, then so be it.
No, but this is conditioning, in my opinion. Sorry, Pete, go on.
Yeah, it's just an edge of the wedge.
No, I was going to say, look, it's a very, very, the most simple and basic law of physics is that for every action, there's a reaction. And everything that has, every aspect of the game that we see today is a product and a result of all of the tinkering that's gone on before.
Yep.
You're right, Pete.
And what will happen is with this 666 or whatever they want to call it, is the coaches will find some way to manipulate that the AFL won't like, and then that will set off a whole other chain of events. You look at the. If you want to talk about a law that is I think it actually assisted congestion. If you look at the deliberate rush behind law now, so instead of a guy not liking what he sees and just rushing behind and then actually opening up the play and getting the ball moving, the ball's pushed back into congestion. There are simple. There's all sorts of rules that you can look at where they've taken action, and and then the reaction to that necessarily follows, and it will happen again. The more they tinker with it, the more issues that will arise.
Well, the whole reason, in my opinion, and you struggle to convince me otherwise, the whole reason why we have all this congestion is, as we've discussed before, it's just the inability of umpires to pay free kicks in packs, pay incorrect disposal, pay high tackles, pay the first free, and move the bloody thing on. They let the ball... they let the play congest because they don't pay free kicks.
You're right, 100% right in my opinion.
And the interchange rule. Once the interchange rule came in, that's when all this started to happen. Is because then, coaches realised that they could get players up and down the ground, and so then we started seeing flooding and zone defences and things like that. And so because you can rest players with the interchange. And they won't. That's the thing. If they actually want to ease congestion, that's the thing they need to wind back. But they won't, because the coaches would, and the players would go bananas because they're not getting their rest. But the problem is that the game has evolved to cater for that resting.
But let's look at it objectively for a minute. Sorry, Mac. The 666 rule is there as an anti-density measure, right? So when is a game least congested? At centre bloody bounces. So you cannot say to me that this isn't just conditioning of the fan base, because 666 at centre bounces won't actually solve a thing. It doesn't solve one thing. But what it does, as Donkey said, it's the thin edge of the wedge. What it does is then lead into, well, we did it for the centre bounces, now we're going to do it for boundary throw-ins, for example, or we're going to do it every ball up or something like it. In and of itself, the 666 at centre bounces does not solve what it purports to solve, so it's absolutely pointless.
Mm-hmm. Just to illustrate your point, Pete, about how things flow on. For example, the ridiculous rule about the 10 metres space, which I think has now been reduced back to 5. Every time they pay, and the whole purpose they keep saying is to keep the ball moving and the game flowing. But once somebody runs anywhere near there, and the way they were applying that rule, the game comes to a halt while they trudge down 50 metres. Great big pack forms down wherever the ball's going to go to, and so they actually. They actually defeat the purpose of what they tried to do in the first place. So
it's a mess.
Yeah.
But every time they bring in one of those rules, and then it's like the ruck rules, nominating 2 people. Again, instead of keeping the ball flowing and moving, and from a boundary throw-in, you have to wait till they nominate. I mean, Dangerfield showed how stupid that rule can be on the weekend. So just another example. They keep, as you said, they keep tinkering, and every time they tinker it, they make another stuff up of it.
Well, the Dangerfield goal was a classic, where that wasn't a football free kick.
Terrible.
That was an administrative free kick. under no circumstances is that free kick one that is paid in the course of game of football. But because of the rules, all of a sudden, Dangerfield gets a kick on goal. It's absolutely disgusting.
What evil was that rule designed to cure, I wonder?
Well, it was supposed to protect. There was concern that the ruckman were getting hammered by third man up, right? So all it's there for is to protect the ruckman. And all this other conversation around blocking and confusion around blocking and all the rest of it is immaterial, because that issue goes away if you do the simple thing that everyone is screaming for, which is just penalise the team that has two blokes going up for the ruck. Just Correct. Get the ball, throw it up, and if two blokes from one team go for it, the other team get a free. Simple as that. And then blocking becomes part of the game, which it should be. Blocking is part of the game around stoppages, because you're trying to get your clearance players free. So, oh my God, it just drives me crazy.
There is not a professional league or sport in the world that is so obsessed with rules and those who officiate the rules in the world. No other sport comes close to this sport in terms of those two issues: the rules and those who officiate the rules. They are, it is elevated above the good of the game and above to me, the players and those who support. It's just ridiculous.
It's actually more than that, Pete. It's not just tinkering with the rules. They're not trying to make the game better. What they're trying to do, it's tinkering with the spectacle, with the product. All the rules that have been introduced in the last 10 years, they've got nothing to do with enhancing the game or making it easier to umpire or easier to play or anything like that. Their sole purpose, every rule that's come in, the sole purpose is to make it a more palatable game to the television audience, and often missing the mark completely. But that's been the motivator. It's the most blatant commercialism you'd ever wish to see, and you only have to sit back and watch a decent SANFL game to realise that a well umpired game of AFL football, of Aussie rules football, it flows, it works, it's as good as it was 10, 20, 50 years ago. And the one or two rule changes that the SANFL have brought in have actually contributed to a faster flowing game, like the last touch rule, etc., which I don't mind actually. Whereas everything that the AFL have brought in have actually been counterproductive. Like you say, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, or making two wrongs and expecting a right to come out of it. They're just chasing their tails with these rule changes. Anyway, moving along. That's really the major part of the news, unless anyone's got other stuff. Oh, I thought it was interesting that Tom Boyd's come out and said that he's suffering from depression and anxiety. Probably no real surprise there. That's been suspected for a while, but it's becoming a more prevalent topic as we move on in this generation. Also, Jeremy McGovern signing for 5, and the potential or the lack of impact that they may have now on Mitch.
Yeah, I saw some comments from McGovern saying that, Jeremy McGovern saying that he thought that Mitch was happy in Adelaide, and he thought some of it was made up. And that was in an article that came out yesterday. Yeah,
I noticed that too.
Just to throw one at you, if Adelaide, Adelaide are moving up the ladder a little bit, and if we keep winning, we will move up the ladder. It's going to be.
We're dropping down. We've won 2 and we're dropping down.
I understand it. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being facetious, Macca.
No, you're being correct, actually. Eventually, if you keep winning, you do go up the ladder. But the point I was trying to make there is that if we are successful, and say we win 4 of our last 5 games, and it's just going to move us further up the ladder and make it more difficult to put a package together to have a crack at the 2 South Australian boys, the Coaches or Rankin, by packaging something to try and get one of the picks low enough to do that. And does anybody here think we will try and package a player with their picks to try and do that?
Yep. Yeah, I think I think we will. I think we might look at it and say we've got a couple of people who could move around the place.
Who though?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we looked at moving an Atkins or maybe a couple of those older guys. If anyone wants to move back home to Victoria, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but does that give us any currency though, Donkey? I can't. Barring Mitch McGovern now, with Lynch and Sloaney signing, barring Mitch, I don't see anyone else really giving us enough currency to get in amongst it at the top end of the draft anymore.
That's the point I'm getting at. I can't see how we can get there unless we were to sacrifice somebody like a McGovern, and why would you?
Well, the only other one, as J-Mac and Vardy point out in the chat, is Gallucci.
Yeah, but I think he's a very promising player.
Yeah, well, I do too, but like you talk, it gets back down to the conversation we're having the other day about Lukosius and whether you want to go all in on a key position player, and whether that's where our need is, or whether you want to go for speed. And if you want to go for speed, then getting rid of Gallucci to get Rankin is kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other, because Gallucci isn't slow, and he's got the benefit of a season under his belt. So that wouldn't be the answer, I wouldn't have thought.
It might take a couple of steps. It might be, if your first round is, I don't know, let's just say, for example, they're, 12 and 9, or 12 and 10, something like that. Those two combined might get you up to, 7 or 8. And then 7 plus a player may then get you up to, 4 or 5. And maybe that then is enough for a Rankin. Probably not for a Luco, but I think it's going to take, 2 or 3 steps to try and climb that rung, and then getting that last rung might be a case of throwing in an Atkins. And there was a bit of smoke around Atkins. Was it last year, towards the end of last year? I think there was a bit of smoke around him, maybe heading home. But so that's a possibility. It's not going to be easy. And whether they start looking at their future, their 2019 pick as well, possibly.
Yeah, I think that's going to come into play, Pete, to be honest with you.
Well, that will, because I did read somewhere where the club has apparently stated that it's prepared to go as far as 2 years ahead with its future first rounders, if necessary, to get to where they want to.
Mm.
And the thing is that they all know they know the draft order, fairly early on, and I don't think there's any great secrets. So we'll know roughly where we need to be, and for all we know, there's a couple of other players up there at the top end of the draft as well that they may be other clubs may be interested. Carlton, Brisbane, and the like might be interested in, and who knows, Luco might go 3-4, and maybe we've got enough to get there.
Yeah. The other thing too is I've been playing around the ladder predictor for the last little while now.
Go you optimist. Tell us how it's going to work. Tell us how we get there, mate.
If we win every game by 100 points, we come in 4th. No, that's actually not true. We still only make 5th. But if I actually have Melbourne tanking in a way, and I think we start that off this week. So if we beat Melbourne, their next run of games are Gold Coast, which I've got them down as winning. So I'm not completely delusional. And then they've got Sydney at the MCG, and I think the Swannies will probably knock them off with a bit of pressure. And then they've got West Coast in WA. Got yes at G. I've missed the game in there, I reckon, somewhere. So out of all those games they've got left, I think they've only got one win they can bank in, and that's Gold Coast. And I think the rest are going to be tight struggles. So I see what game I've missed here. I must have clicked. Yeah. And they've got Hawks next. Hawks. No, not Hawks. They've got. Jeez, what have I done?
I don't know. I'm with you there, Don. I've got Melbourne and North dropping out, to be honest with you, and Port are in a bit of trouble.
Port are in a bit of trouble, and just to play this little game as well. Port have got the Doggies this week, which I expect them to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't.
It's at Ballarat, which is going to be the wild card, I think.
Yep. Then they've got us in the showdown. Then they've got West Coast at Adelaide Oval, but West Coast aren't scared of playing in there. Then they've got Collingwood at the G, and then they've got Essendon at home, but Essendon seem to be playing decent footy. So Port Adelaide Port Adelaide could conceivably drop out of the 8 if they don't pull it together. And I've actually got them. I've got them 9th at the moment on my predictor, and that's with them beating Essendon. They will fall short, about 6% short of the Cats. So the other thing too is out of our last 5 games, I think we need to win 4 to 5 to significantly climb up the ladder. So if we only win another 3 games the rest of the year, we're actually going to hover around that pick 11-12 mark. Not pick 11-12, we're going to hover around the 11-12 mark. So those last couple of wins will actually do the driving for us within the ladder position. That could mean that we're, if we jag a couple of wins and we're not good enough to make the finals, we're still actually going to be, in top 10 range.
I'll tell you who just to throw a bit of a spanner in there, I'll tell you who I reckon is in a little bit of trouble and who's far from over the line for a top 8 spot, and that's the Swannies.
Yeah, agree.
They have got they've got this week. They've got Essendon at Etihad. That's about the easiest game they've got. They've then got Collingwood, and I reckon that is that's at the SCG where they've been woeful. They
and
barely won a
Collingwood
game
traditionally good.
Collingwood traditionally pretty good there.
Yeah.
Then they've got Melbourne at the MCG, which is certainly no walkover. Then they've got GWS at Spotless. GWS are just in scintillating form at the moment. And then they finish with Hawthorn at the SCG. That's a really, really tricky one. They've got to win 2 to get ready. They're on 11 wins at the moment. Well, they've got to win 3 out of those 5 to be guaranteed a spot.
Yeah.
And if they only pinch 2 and they end up on 13 wins, they may struggle as well. But they could just as easily only win 1 of them.
Yeah.
And fall right out.
Yeah,
they've been unimpressive.
You'd have to be either very, very good or very, very lucky, in my opinion, to work out what the final 8 is going to be at this stage. Because that's just, we've only talked about 2 or 3 teams, what the games they've got coming up. If you apply that all the way through, the amount of combinations would be enormous, I think.
No, they are, and I spent probably a little bit too much time over the last 48 with it and doing
Geez, your connection's really bad today, Donkey.
Yeah, it's weird. I've got the Catters winning on the weekend, but it wouldn't be surprised if Brisbane knocks them off these late charging sides. And I would only actually put the Pies, Richmond and West Coast in the top 4. And I would say 4 till about 12 could be made up of anybody. Obviously 12 can't make 4, but
Giants are a lock. Giants are a lock for top 4. They've got a pretty comfortable run home. I think that Richmond, Collingwood, West Coast, and GWS are a lock for the top 4, and then sort out the rest from there. I think probably Geelong and Hawthorn have the best runs, and I think that they will quite possibly occupy 5th and 6th, and then I honestly reckon both Port and Sydney and Melbourne are the 3 teams that could potentially drop out.
There's a big game in 22, which is the GWS Sydney match, and I think that'll determine on who slips in that one.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say there's 2 competitions, but I'll do it now considering we're talking ladder predictors. It's round 18. So we've got 5 rounds to go. We're going to run a little competition, and I'm prepared to put a carton or give out a carton of beer to the winner. But in order to win this competition, you'll need to take a screenshot of your ladder predictor for the ladder positions after the end of the minor round series. You can either post it on Twitter, aflcrowcast.com, or Facebook, aflcrowcast.com on our page, or on the Big Footy forums in the CrowCast thread. And as I said, the nearest correct entry after the minor round series will get a carton of beer to their of their choice, up to a reasonable amount of money. So yeah, have a crack at your ladder predictors over the next few days and post them up so that we can collate them, and then we'll see how we go.
Now, you better qualify. The Vardy Magic says how many submissions are allowed.
No, only one per person, obviously. Vardy. Yeah. Vardy's obviously got a drinking problem. Yeah, one per person. So put your name with your submission so we know who you are. If anyone's caught cheating, they'll get the ban hammer from me, and we'll probably send, I don't know, Donkey after you or something like that. But all in good faith. The other thing I just point out, Collingwood are at 275 this week. There's got to be some money to be made around there, because I reckon Collingwood are going to win that game.
Yeah, I've done a mortgage on the house.
Anyway,
just so that I can gloat a bit too, how's my Collingwood for top 8 predictions?
Yes.
How's that one travelling along?
Yeah, really nicely. I got to say, Pete, I've been thinking about that over the last couple of weeks, and I've been waiting for you to bring it up. I certainly wasn't going to bring it up, but I might actually drag up the audio from, I think it was probably episode 3 or 4 this season, where you've gone really, really hard on Collingwood, and we've just all scoffed at you. And you can have your moment of glory.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking forward to that, hearing that, because I wouldn't have been kind about it.
Anyway, that's far too long talking about rubbish. So let's talk about the match we just had and the match coming up. Pete and Donkey, you want to have a little bit of a say about the Brisbane game before we move forward?
Way go, Donk.
No, I was watching it sort of in transit all over the place, so I'll add in some spice to you, Pete.
All right, mate. I actually was really, really impressed by the performance. I thought that from a system point of view, I thought that it was one of our better performances for the year. I thought there was a lot of really, really good positive ball movement. And I thought our transition was really, really good. I thought we really controlled the game for large periods. Obviously, some issues with our entries, although there was a lot of good forward 50 entry as well, which I think got lost a little bit in the forest of poor goal kicking. And I noted that we had 14 marks inside 50, and I think that's a pretty good result. And I had a look at some of the other games, and if you looked at Richmond and Collingwood, both top teams, both had strong wins, and Richmond had, I think, 15 marks inside 50 and Collingwood 16, or the other way around. So, 14 marks inside 50 is a pretty good result, and that should mean that you're getting, good set shots on goal. And unfortunately, we just missed a few easy shots. I think we've got a few rusty players in there that haven't played a lot of football and are just sort of getting themselves back into it. So, I thought overall I was pretty happy with the performance. I think that, a goal after the siren, pulls it back to 5 points, and when really it wasn't. And, again, another set shot missed down the other end, and it's a 17-point win, and you think, oh, well, that was reasonably comfortable. So, even though Brisbane kept themselves in it with some good goal kicking themselves, I think that they were, like 7 goals won or something like that at one point. I thought that we had control for large portions, and I never really felt that we were going to lose the game. I thought we had that, our control of it was that significant, and it was probably only towards the end when we were clearly flagging a bit. It had been a fairly high octane game, and we were flagging a little bit at the end, and there were some and of course we were a couple of rotations down as well, which didn't help, and we had underdone players. So, but I thought that we still, even then, we still controlled the ball for good, 1 to 2 minute periods where we just chipped the ball around and showed good control and good composure. And so I felt fairly comfortable that we were going to see the game out. That was my take on it.
Well, I think a very good take too. And that point about the marks in the forward line, that was all done without McGovern taking any as well, because he didn't touch the ball in the first half. And to my recollection, I think he got all his disposals basically in the back line, or the majority of them in the second half in the back line. So he can only get better from there and add to that as well. So it is quite a good number of shots on goal. I thought Jenkins, the old McKay problem, turned him around 15 degrees. He's running a little bit crooked. And, it's bit of a habit that's creeping into the AFL where so many players run at about 15 degrees off the goals and then try and straighten up at the last minute. And I don't know why they just don't copy what the big boy from North Melbourne does. He just runs straight at the goal and kicks it there.
And then you had, situations where, surprisingly, Eddie, had a complete, brain fade when we have a really good, inside 50 entry and we lace him out with a nice pass, maybe 35 metres out on a reasonable angle. You'd expect Eddie to go back and kick that, and for some inexplicable reason he handballs to Jake Kelly and it all ends up in a bit of a mess, and I'm not sure what Jake was doing so far forward anyway. But so that doesn't even count as a score, unfortunately. But that's a good inside 50 that laces up a forward and should produce, a gettable shot on goal, and doesn't even register as a score.
Yep, man. Basically, Eddie's he's in my opinion suffering from the yips from set shots at the moment. He really does not want to take a set shot, even when he's got to take the kick himself. He tries to play on. Because he did have one set shot from about 20, 30 metres out, not that far out, and he missed. He pulled it slightly to the left, and that was before that particular one that he moved on to Kelly.
Fane, what was your take?
Oh, look, I much the same as you, Pete. I think it was a pretty solid win against a bit of adversity, Brisbane on a roll at their home deck, up and about, obviously, and looking to play a very physical style of game, which I think will become their signature under Chris Fagan, particularly with Luke Hodge there in the background egging them on. A couple down on rotations, etc., and probably a few blokes just looking a little bit out of sorts, I felt, a little bit loose on disposal. But I was the same as you. I felt like we controlled the game for long periods of time. And in the last quarter, when there was a real danger of us getting run over, I felt like, for the most part, we controlled the tempo in that last quarter pretty well.
Very much so. Very much so.
Despite Brisbane's best efforts to just start getting the thing moving and get on that roller coaster, I felt like we battened down the hatches pretty well. I felt our defence was excellent. I felt like our run and carry on transition was pretty solid, and as you rightly point out, barring a couple of, probably more so early on, a couple of wasteful forward 50 entries, I felt it was pretty solid. So, look, if I was Don Pike, I would have been happy to get out of there with the 4 points and no real injuries. It looks like Lockie Murphy's going to come up. I haven't really heard much about today.
Still got headaches at the moment.
Yeah, so he might be in doubt. And Lockie Murphy, I think, is okay, Macca? I think
he will play.
Yeah, I think he's going to come up.
Murphy will play, and Dodo, they'll give another test later on in the week. But at the moment, he's still suffering from headaches. Yeah,
I doubt he gets up. But Sloaney, they've declared Sloaney right to go, so he got trodden on. Isn't it weird? You never get your foot trodden on, then you get to have a Liz Frank injury, and all of a sudden everyone's jumping on your foot, for Christ's sakes.
I know. It's like when I was playing, I broke a little bone in my foot, and I kept playing with it. But I'll tell you what, he got trod on 3 times during the year. Just every time it was just about ready to heal again.
How can you... Did someone tell you that, Macca? Because you surely can't remember that far back, can you?
Oh, I can even remember some of the crap you said, mate.
There's stone tablets around his house.
It's a long time ago.
We still used to use inflatable balls then.
Were Torrens wearing... Did you used to use those brown footballs? Not the nice red ones, the old brown ones?
No, we did, but we also had yellow footballs even then.
The Ross Faulkners.
Yeah. But I think the thing to remember is that apart from we are getting some players back, but we're getting them in name only, and there's a number of key players out there who are 1, 2 at the best 3 games back from long layoffs, and so they're bound to be rusty, and they're just getting kilometres. And if we can, I think what we've done really, really well is in the last 2 weeks we've found a way to get over the line and get a couple of wins and keep our season alive while still getting some game time into these guys coming back. And I get the feeling that, we're just now, if we'd have maybe just, one, maybe two more wins earlier in the year, I think we'd probably be in a pretty good position at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
And, it's moving on to the Melbourne game. I think a lot will depend on how Melbourne respond to that loss against Geelong. It was a classic Melbourne capitulation, and in seasons past that would be enough for them to drop their heads and lose the next couple and fall out of contention. So it'll be interesting to see whether Goodwin's actually instilled a little bit of grit into that team. But I always maintain that it's hard to turn around a belting, and they did us by 90 points last game, and yes, it's at home, and yes, we're looking a little bit healthier, but I don't know. It's hard to see us, in my opinion, turning around a 90-point spanking.
It's all going to revolve around our midfield in the sense that they're going to be roving to a losing ruck. Max Gawn is by far head and shoulders the best ruckman in Australia, in my opinion, and he when he's really on and he's dominant. I mean, Jacob wouldn't get a touch if Max is serious. So our players just have to position themselves so that Melbourne don't get the ball easily, or that we get the ball, or if they get the ball, we hold them up. So, and I think that's going to. If you look all around the rest of the ground, I don't think they're any better than us in any of the other positions at all. I don't even think their midfield's any better than ours either. I just think that the dominance they get from Max Gawn is incredible, and I think if we can negate that, we can win the game. But when we played the team that we took up to Darwin, it was not the same teams that we've got. But we're fielding here. We're fielding a much better team.
Yeah, I think they're fielding a little bit a slightly weaker team too, though. Missing Viney, you're going to be missing Hibbard, and obviously Lever's out as well from the team we played in round 10. Also, it looks like Harms, who had surgery on Monday, they talk about him maybe getting up for the game, but you think with surgery it might take a little bit longer. So I think they're four fairly significant outs for a team that we got spanked by, considering our ends are Sloan, Walker, McGovern, Matt Crouch, I believe, and I know he might have been back by then. And I just think it's just a different vibe. Whether that's a 14-goal different vibe, I'm not sure. But I'm less confident about this one. I'll probably have a little bit of PTSD because I was in the crowd in the Alice game. So, it's just different squads. Oh, and Seedsman was back in. Don't forget, Seedsman was laid out against that in that Melbourne game too.
So you're still mentally scarred, Donkey?
Oh yeah, that hurt. I literally went off to go get a chips and some drink for the kids. Back about 3 minutes into the first quarter, and we're about 4 goals down. So that's tough after 2 days in the car.
Yeah, I don't think we get home for this one. I was happy to tip us against West Coast and Geelong. I felt comfortable that we'd win those 2 games, and also Brisbane away, but I just I've got a few problems with this particular game. First problem is that for whatever reason, we don't have a good record against Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval. The second reason is that Melbourne are the highest scoring team in the league. Statistically, they've scored more points than any other team. And I noted that after the game against GWS, in the press conference, that Don Pike mentioned that he was concerned with some of the easy goals that were being leaked, and I think that has characterised our defence a little bit this year. Whilst they've played some good football, our defence, I think that we have been prone to leaking some easy goals, and I think that we're just going to struggle a little bit defensively. Now, Melbourne are a team that the way that they go about their scoring is in clusters. They tend to go on 5 or 6 goal rolls and break teams with sort of 15, 20 minutes of football. I'm just not sure that our defence at the moment is organised enough to withstand that kind of a surge, which will inevitably come. And regardless of the midfield battle, they will win their share of ball, and that's just an outcome that's going to occur regardless of how well we play. They will win their share of ball, and at some point they are good enough that there will be a surge. And I just have a bad feeling that that surge will produce 5, 6, 7 goals, and that will, whether it be the second quarter or third quarter, that will put a dent in the game. So that's my concern. I think Talia is not fit. I think that I was really impressed with Alex Keith on the weekend. I think that he's had 2 good games, and really like what I see with him. I think he's a good footballer, and you can look at the individual players in the defence and think, well, they're actually, they've all had reasonable seasons, and Keith's been okay, Brown's okay, Laird's okay, Cheney's been good, Talia's been good. So that if you look at them individually, that you can say, well, look, they've had reasonable seasons, but as a collective, the team defence has just seemed a little bit off, and we just seem to have, I noticed it again on Saturday night. We can just sort of leak easy goals. So that'll be my concern, and that'll be the reason that I'll be tipping Melbourne on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'll be tipping Adelaide on the basis that I think the game up in Darwin doesn't count for very much at all, quite frankly, because of the fact that the side that they had up there, which in spite of the fact that he went off to get his chips and his drink, Donkey did actually notice quite well the players that are missing from that game for Melbourne, and when you add to that, and it's compounded by the players that we're bringing back in, it's not the same two teams playing. And on that basis, I think that we're building at the moment. There's no doubt about that. And I think at the moment, with the injuries that they've got, they're slightly going the other way around. So I think they're on a slight decline. We're on the way up, and where they intersect, we'll find out on the weekend. But I think that we will win this game, and I think we'll win it by about 21 points.
As I mentioned before, I'm a bit like you, Pete. I'm very afraid of Gawn v Jacobs. Gawn's had an excellent season, and what they've done over the last few matches with Maxi Gawn as well is they've used him as that loose in defence, and given our lack of marking power in the contested situation, at least up forward, I think that if we don't get our forward entries sorted and drop the eyes and hit up a few targets early on, we're going to be in danger of just seeing that ball bounce out. Melbourne's stats are pretty impressive, I mean, they're as you said, Pete, they're the highest scoring team in the comp, the second for disposals per game. They love to handball and run, but they're also third in tackles, first in inside 50s, first in goal assists, third in clearances, and they keep the opponents down. They're first in least opponent kicks per game, they're second in least opponents marks per game, second in least opponent inside 50s per game. So they're doing a lot of things right. Their stats probably belie their position on the ladder. And yet, to me, the issue with Melbourne is that they can go missing and they can lose a bit of heart, and that's probably, I think, what keeps us in the ball game. If we can get a run on and get on top of them, I think Melbourne fall away. But if we don't play efficiently, and if we don't move the ball and enter our forward 50 with some intent and with some system, I can see the ball just bouncing out. And then, as you rightly point out, Pete, our defensive running this season hasn't been our strong point, and I don't think it's necessarily a problem with personnel in the back six. I think it's a product of our inability through injury, fitness and form to run both ways. So for that reason alone, I think if Melbourne get a run on, then they beat us on the counter. Unfortunately, I think this is a game that we're going to drop by about 4 goals.
Yeah, I think it's not all doom and gloom. Even though I'm going to tip against it, but I think I'm not violently opposed to Macca, and I think that you can certainly make a case. You can always make a case for Adelaide winning at the Adelaide Oval. You can always, you can make a case based upon the fact that we showed a lot of good signs on Saturday night, and we've now got 2, 3, and 4 games into a lot of really important players, and so yes, you can certainly make a case for the Crows, no doubt about that. And I'm certainly not, I'm going to go there hopeful for a win, but if someone's asking me, my answer for Doe, then it's going to be Melbourne.
Yeah, the interesting thing it's going to be, I think, to me, Max Gawn is the key to the game in the sense that he's going to dominate the ruck, and he's going to get plenty of ball as well. So therefore, it's what we do once he's hit the ball, when he's tapped it down. That's going to come into it very, very heavily, and also, Phoenix is right. He does drop back there, and he's a very good mark. But it's how we bring the ball into our forward lines, and what we have to do. The forwards have to spread and make up multiple opportunities that he can't cover them all. So,
you'd hope, Macca, that Pike is, you'd hope that they put a serious amount of homework into Max Gawn. I mean, they're talking him up as Brownlow medal potential, and probably the first ruckman in many a long year to probably even poll well. So he's an incredibly influential player. So you would hope that they are putting the kind of homework into him that they would ordinarily put into a star midfielder.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The other interesting thing will be whether we do what we did against Geelong and almost concede clearances. Geelong, we played a bit of a ring around the rosy, circling the contested ball, and we got smashed in that number, and yet we were effective on the scoreboard. And I just wonder, with Melbourne's quality mids and their dominance in the ruck, whether we might take a similar approach and almost concede first touch in those close situations, but concentrate and focus on pressuring the outlet possession and trying to cause turnovers that way. That's going to be, if we do that, it'll probably show me that the last time we did it against Geelong was by design and not just how the game panned out, because it seems a similar situation this time around.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that the Knight will have a task, and I think the guy that he'll sit on will probably be Brayshaw. Brayshaw has been absolutely starring. I've got him in my dream team, so I've been watching very closely, and he is in scintillating form at the moment. So he would be the midfielder that I would think that Knight will go to, because he's been getting a large number of clearances, and if we can neutralise that, then it just brings our hard workers back into the game. And I'd like to see Gibbs played more in the midfield, but on the outer, as we did when, let Sloan and Crouch do the hard work and get the ball out to him, and because he's a good user of the ball when he's out there. And we haven't been using him in that manner in the last couple of weeks, but I would against Melbourne, because I think we've got to bring the ball in very well and use our forwards properly, and Gibbs is capable of doing that.
Tex in this week or next week?
This week.
Yeah. So who comes out? Who comes out for the Texan?
I think Doty doesn't get up, and I think they look at moving. I reckon they might even look at.
Kelly would go back then.
Yeah,
as he did on Saturday. And when Jake Kelly just plays in a blanketing kind of role in defence, he's a decent player.
So potentially
liked him in the wing.
Potentially wet, and you're talking about 4 tools again: Lynch, Jenkins, McGovern, and Tex. Is that going to work?
Well, you're not going to drop any of those players.
Well, aren't you? I mean, if you're serious about winning the game, and it's a wet deck.
When was the last time any one of those 4 players was omitted?
I'm not saying that they will, Pete. I'm saying should they?
No. And sorry, I'm not meaning to be argumentative, but I think it's not even a question worth asking, because they just won't do it. I couldn't even tell you the last time one of those 4 was omitted other than for injury. They're fit, they'll play. If they're fit, they're available, they'll play. I think probably the question to ask is whether Hardigan is fit, and
he's out for at least another 2.
Oh, okay. So I think that probably all that happens is Tex comes in for Duday, as you say, Macca, and they shuffle Kelly back to defence to cover Duday's spot, and
Galucci comes up to the wing, or Knight comes up to the wing.
Got a number of players that they can run through there. So
it
I think that's how they work that.
It immediately weakens one of our strengths from last week and the week before, and that's our forward 50 pressure. Immediately. I think it's a terrible move to do what they'll likely do, simply because we've looked good since we've been a little bit more nimble up forward, and you know, one of the things I did notice against Brisbane is that our forward line by and large was reasonably open all night. There was plenty of space to run into, and that extra tool in there, I don't know.
Oh, look, I'm 100% with you on that one, Phoenix, and I was thinking about that. If they're going to bring in have the 4 tools, you've got to always have at least one of them on the bench. So use the rotation system so that we must have at least 3 smalls in that forward line area to get the crumbs.
Would they
the
look
other thing on top of that is that they're playing Greenwood up forward now as well.
Well, only on rotation.
Yeah, he's more than he was earlier in the year. Oh,
no doubt. But I mean, he's playing tall as well. So all of a sudden, you've got tons of marking power, but you haven't got much under the deck. I wonder whether they'll consider, given Mitch's scratchy form last week, whether they'll consider shifting McGovern to half back for periods of the game. He's
I'm
done.
Sure that that'll happen.
Yeah,
I think so too.
They might have to do that just to
balance it up.
Yeah,
well, I don't think we lose. I don't think we don't really lose much in forward pressure in terms of either Greenwood or McGovern. They both cover the ground and they're both fierce tacklers, and they're both actually pretty good at applying forward pressure.
It's
it is Tex. Yeah, what are you going to do? Not what?
No, but
you're not playing.
You're dropping a small out to fit Tex in, so immediately your forward pressure drops by 20%.
What are you getting at?
Well, what I'm getting at is that the 4 tools is going to be counter what's worked for us over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that's why I'm suggesting that McGovern perhaps needs to go back to a half-back flank.
Fair, yeah. Well, that's fair enough. I just don't know how. I think that's just the first choice players that we've got, and we are a bit cumbersome. I mean, I agree we are a bit cumbersome, but I just don't see too many ways around it. Particularly now that, as I said before, with Greenwood coming in there as well, it makes 6 players, 5 or 6.
Well, it's 5. It's 5 marking targets basically.
5 marking targets
and bets.
I don't know. I mean, maybe if it doesn't rain, maybe that's I mean, does anyone know much about the Melbourne defence?
Well, they've got a couple out, so that makes them, and we're talking about 2 of their very best out. So
is Oscar McDonald? Is he?
Yeah, he's in
playing.
Yeah, he's playing.
So you got one key. Who's their other key besides McDonald?
There's obviously Lever who's missing, and he's the intercept man, and they got the guy from Essendon. What's his name?
Melksham. I don't know. You're telling the story, Macca?
I'm just putting it out there that maybe that becomes a strength. Maybe maybe we're looking at their defence as not being particularly able to deal with 4 or 5 big marking targets if it's not horribly rainy, and even sometimes as they say, even in the wet, the tall players don't get any shorter as the game drags on.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much about that. I think it's about our ability to defend once the ball's on the deck. Our ability to repeat 50 entries and also stop running on the turnover. And to me, that's where the danger lies. They've got McDonald, they've got Melksham, they've got the other Tom McDonald. I don't know whether they're playing him forward or back at the moment.
He's playing forward.
Yeah.
Hibbard's the other player that's out.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that McGovern coming back in does is it releases Lynch. I mean, Lynch played fairly close to goal against Geelong, and it does release Lynch further up the ground and plays more traditional role.
No, I'd play him up high. I'd play him as a link player up high. And that will create a lot more space then as well.
So he played much closer to goal against Geelong.
But I think that the missing Lever, and they haven't gone as well since Lever's been missing as an intercept player. And Hibbert's one of the guys that they normally use as a clearance player because he's got a very good left foot and he's a running player. So, I mean, that's two good players out of their defence. So, and as I said, at the same time, we're feeding back in players gradually, and we're not far from our full strength now. Just a couple of players and we'll be there. And that's why I think that we have got every chance. It'll come back to whether we play with 100% intensity in the game and how we. As you said, Pete, how much time we put into neutralising the impact that Max Gawn can have on a game.
All right, final tips. Macca, you've got us going up by four so goals. Pete,
21 points.
Pete, you got us getting up as well, yeah?
No, I'm go Dees.
Your Dees. Donkey, how much are we winning by?
I'll go with Macca, the 21.
Yeah, and I'm probably, 15 or 20 points to the Dees. For me, now, Donkey, I hope you've been preparing because you're up, my man.
All right, just to wrap last week's games in Dream Team, the Dreamboats, Donkey's Dreamboats knocked off Monkey Slappers, which is a massive result for the competition. Everyone's happy. Newbie Kimber took care. Went down to DIY brain surgery. Corey Holtz took care of Shoe Stars. Sanders went down to Peanut, the Winter March. Azza, McPherson of Interest, knocked off Mick Spuds. Then we've got Dylan FCC, got another win, still in second. So Wheat got another win, still in first. Habanero Hot Sauce went down to the Coulda Beans, and Big Crow's Bangers still in the medieval times with 1372 went down to Rushos at 2440, which takes us into the very exciting final round of the season. We've got Sir Wheat, Peter, obviously not the one on the cast, right out on front on 60 points, 2 wins clear of second. Dylan coming in at 52. Peanut, the winner, marching on 48 points in third. And Corey, one win wonder, is in on 48 as well. The top 8 is only got one spot up for grabs. So we've got the last 3 people, Sanders, Brain Surgery and Mixed Spuds, all on 36 points. 4% separates them all in with a chance to claim that final 8 spot. As we jump over to the tipping, J-Mac has pulled away quite late in the season. He's now got a 3-point lead over Moyley and the Cellar Dwellers. Moyley only getting a 7 that round. Dominique only getting a 7 that round. But big ups to J-Mac and the Cellar Dwellers who pulled a big 8 last round, probably only assuming that they got the Richmond game wrong. Then we've got Megan V got 8, B Short got 8, and they're notable mentions. We go down to the CrowCast end of the table, which is the bottom 6 spots. Donkey to Water on 90, Peter J on 88, and Phoenix on 82. We all only got 5 this week, and the margin between us hasn't changed for about 6 weeks. So I'm pretty sure I know what's going on there. Macro, I can't see you in this. You're not tipping in this competition because you're not playing with us. So
the rumour was that he squibbed. Yeah.
No, unless you put up $1,500 for the winner like the one I'm in.
Good on you, mate. Come on, grumpy old man.
That's what I am. I really don't care.
That was quality, by the way, Donkey. Well done, mate.
Cheers.
Well,
take it away, Macca.
Well, you've caught me a little bit short because I haven't got anything I particularly like this week.
Well, mate, you've only had a week to prepare.
About 5 minutes, but no, No,
we sprung the podcast on you, did we?
No, you just sprung this sex on me. I forgot about it.
So it happens every week,
Well,
Macca.
that was Macca's Sweets and Smacks, and we'll get into Game of Crows.
I've got smacks.
You just got smacked, mate. Game of Crows this week.
That's what I call hosting.
Game of Crows this week. Now, I'm about 2/3 of the way through finishing the update, and was it not for me having to cook tea for children, I probably would have got it done. But rest assured, we're getting there. And what's notable is that the amount of people that have dropped off because I haven't been keeping the update. So, never mind. This week we're going to go for meters gained. So, meters gained is a pretty clear-cut one, and we won't do any sort of funny stuff with the scoring. It'll just be a 3-2-1 scoring. So those who pick the highest meters gained for the Adelaide Crows get the chocolates, and that's all I've got. Macca, do you want to have another go now or what?
Yeah, I just in terms.
Oh, that's soft.
In terms of,
Come on, mate.
yeah, well, no sweets, but the smacks. There's plenty of smacks, and the AFL, of course, they are, as you said before, Phoenix and Pete, they are destroying the game at the moment with the amount of changes they're making to the rules, and it seems like they are definitely going to bring these other.
Yeah, we already talked about that one.
And I'm allowed to give them a smack for it, though, mate.
Yeah,
And I know, and I still think that the umpires for our game deserve a great big cloud over there.
yeah, we talked about that one.
Can I finish? How you can get a bloke get reported and get 2 games, and nobody gets reported for it, I just can't believe that. And the other situation where a mark is not paid to the opposition because it's touched, according to an umpire that's 10 metres away, and some idiot runs in from the centre of the ground and 50 metres away and overrules him. I can see I'm getting my Zeds.
Come on, mate, hurry up. Remember, this is only supposed to be a 5-minute filler.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing. And so a big slap over them, and also to the host of this show for bugging the shit out of me at the moment.
Well, I felt it was about time you had a crack. Donkey is the one that normally gets it, so it's about time. That was Macca. Now, Jay
That's
Macca.
3 times we've heard that bit of music.
You want to go again?
At least not the Stir Club song.
No, not yet. But I tell you what, mate, they're coming. They're coming for a 3-peat. Look,
Yeah, I saw that at Unley Oval the other day when they gave up 13 goals in the last quarter.
nah, that's all right. They bounce back.
You're
They're
only
all
as good
good.
as your last back-to-back, Pete.
That's it. Yeah, Wesley's going all right. Who they lose to? Don't think they turned up against Norwood. Anyway, look, that's
Name your team.
yeah, that's it from us. As I mentioned on Sunday night, thanks to those who've chucked some money our way on the PayPal button. If you want to do so, visit us at aflcrowcast.com and just press the button. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at AFL Crowcast. If you're listening via iTunes, please leave us a star rating and a review. Also, just mentioning that Google now have a dedicated podcast app which we're syndicated in, so if you're using an Android phone, go to the Play Store and download the Google Podcast app and search for CrowCast and you'll find us there. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been short, sharp and to the point, but we still managed to hit the hour.
Punchy, I like it.
Punchy, except for Macca. Macca, I felt was a bit off this game.
Well, I had to put up with the bloody comment. The guy that runs this show bugging me.
Yeah, fair call. All right, see you
You know what I
guys.
really love?
What? Come on, quick.
See you guys. No, I was going to say I love it when you do a really tight 60-minute show and then you spend 10 minutes talking about how good it was.
Well, you spend so long at the end that I run out of bloody outro music and I have to hit repeat to play it again. And now I've got to pad it out. Night Pete, night Macca, night Donkey. We will see you obviously on Sunday night for the Sunday wrap. In the meantime, Stay safe, and we'll see you then. Good night, guys.
Good night, all.